How do you get people to change? What's that tipping point to start gardening, to start composting? If we can crack that, then we've gone a long way.
Composting, it's something that is new to a lot of people, and I think that Bozeman is a community that are of that mindset and wanting to do the right thing with their organic waste.
It's about providing a needed service in our community, and it's always a journey of learning best practices.
I think that we've got the resources to really do some amazing projects, because I think there's nothing that builds community quite like working together.
So this is actually a great bin in terms of its ability to move it to another area and turn. This is an example of what I'm doing right now. There are kitchen scraps in here, just accumulating them. And when I throw kitchen scraps in there, I take leaves. These are leaves from last fall, and I throw a layer of leaves in there, so that cuts down on the smell, right? And then I just continue to do that for the entire winter. And by the end of the winter, of course, this thing is up to here. And then it's ready to go for the spring. And I'll then dismantle this thing, move it over here, and turn the pile. So this is a pile that has broken down. And you can see that with this stuff, this is kind of in the halfway stage. It's almost done, but not quite there. But you can still see materials that haven't yet broken down. I'll throw this onto the garden bed this fall, and it should be ready by spring. So this is kind of halfway there.
In natural systems, there is no waste because it's a very cyclical process. Composting is inherent to a closed loop system in terms of taking, say, kitchen scraps or garden waste and converting it into nutrient-rich fertilizer for your garden.
What we're doing with composting is we're taking a natural process and we're just kind of working with different variables to speed up the process, but then also to make it more hospitable to have in an urban area.
It's tough to incentivize people to compost because it's pretty easy just to bury it in the landfill. But I think the mentality of a lot of people in Bozeman is that, they want to sort of take the next step.
One of the largest issues as a society that we need to tackle is waste. 50% of the food that is produced in this country and 1/3 of the food that is produced globally is wasted before it's even set up for human consumption.
We've all grown accustomed to just kind of throwing away our waste.
Not thinking about waste.
And that's it. And it's gone, and we never see it again, and we never think about it again. And we're just like, somebody else is taking care of it. That was our initial inspiration to start this. We've grown accustomed to recycling glass and plastic and cardboard, but what about the food waste?
We started Happy Trash Can curbside composting in September of 2016.
We were taking in more than we imagined. I had no idea how much we would be picking up.
There's an accessibility of composting where anyone can do it, but then if you don't have the time or you don't have the energy, you can pay us and we will come by. We will make it as seamless for you as possible. We will pick up your bucket, give you a new one so you don't have to deal with any of the uck factor.
I've been interested in composting for about 5-6 years. For the most part, I was interested initially as like a waste diversion, and I think Bozeman is a really good spot to do it. There's tons of food waste that's coming out of here that needs to be dealt with. Traditional composting was my initial interest, and Vermicomposting sort of came in a little bit later. It's pretty different from what traditional composting is because you're dealing with live animals that you can see. It's not just little microscopic bacteria and decomposers. The end product of that is worm castings, which is basically an organic fertilizer. The product is something that I really believe in. It's living soil.
I grew up outside of Seattle in a suburb with very little access to growing food, to anything around sustainability. I just decided that I wanted to learn a lot more about where my food came from, and so I learned all those homesteading skills. And then with the food came the question of how to preserve food, and that's where I really started to learn about fermentation. I moved to Bozeman. I was willing to let everything that I knew about myself go to see what came back. And the thing that showed up was composting. So then I just started looking into what to do with compost. And I came across something called bokashi composting. And then the light bulb went off when I looked at the active ingredients, and it was yeast and bacteria. And I understood in that moment that this is a fermentation process. It's great because it can be done on a very small level. It can be done in an apartment, it can be done in a small home, but it can also be scaled up. And that makes it really accessible to just about everybody. There's an efficiency to it, but also there's a grace to it, and that I'm actually in touch with every step. That's just part of my everyday life. It's just part of it's like brushing my teeth. It's that composting is just part of my own sort of extended hygiene.
So this is one compost system, and the thing I like about this is just the look of it. And also you can lift this thing up like that, and then you can turn the stuff in there or start accumulating stuff in there. But this material that's below here, that's been sort of cooking for quite a while, you can see there are a ton of worms in it, and it's almost completely broken down. So this is when you can tell, obviously, that compost is compost, is that one, it smells earthy, and you can't identify any parts.
I compost to reduce waste. It's gotten to the point where I can't really stand putting any kind of kitchen scraps in a plastic bag that will then be tied up and then brought to a landfill where it'll putrefy. And then, of course, it creates compost for my garden, just creating another closed loop system on my property.
What sustainability is the continuation of something for the long term. It's a practice that's having the least amount of impact that it can have, because we are humans and everything we do has an impact. The approach of us trying to tackle food waste with Happy Trash Can, it's yes, diverting waste from going to the landfills, but it's also about breaking bad habits and creating new, hopefully better habits within our community.
We talk about the farm to table movement, but I think it's really fun to close that loop. So then table to farm. How do I get what's left over on my table, what's left over from my cooking, what's left over from my daily life? How do I get that back into the soil? How do I close that loop?
Maintaining the soil health is so essential.
Take a pinch of soil and there's millions of microorganisms living in just a small little speck. That is what sustains us. This medium of soil to grow food and for plants to thrive in. It's very important to know what is going on in there. We need to look at this holistically, like supporting local foods is great, but making sure that we're getting local fertility is also very important.
There's a lot of need for worm castings for organic growers, and I believe there's quite a bit right here in Gallatin County. If it's organic, you have a better understanding of what's in your end product. Using food waste, actually, it's got a good variety of nutrients. It has tons of minerals that can be absorbed by the plant and then end up in the fruiting bodies, in the leaves, the things that you're eating, so that you're actually consuming those minerals. Whereas something that's grown with just an NPK, all you've got is NPK, and you're missing all of that, whole food part of the plant.
I coordinate a privately owned, communally worked garden called Spring Creek Communal Garden. We are primarily a group of people who grow food to eat it together. It's a way of coming together as a community to work in the earth, to share stories, to be together. And then every Sunday we have a potluck, and the potlucks are like Thanksgiving. The level of abundance and generosity and the quality of the food that we eat and the stories that we tell, and having worked together, it's actually quite an extraordinary experience. So I actually feel like I'm a cultural inoculant, and that in the same way, like, you know, the yeast to sourdough, that there's a way that I bring through my passion, I bring a particular consciousness into people's lives. And I can shake people's lives up a little bit sometimes with some of the ideas that I have. The real reward for me is to see this community of people who might not know each other otherwise come together, and then just the level of connection that continues throughout the year is amazing.
I compost because I believe it's the right thing to do. There's a certain satisfaction to it as you're putting it in the compost bin versus in the trash. It's a gratifying experience to participate and do it properly. There's a lot of people that haven't been exposed to it. They don't know that there is an option, or that there's, you know, companies in town that can facilitate you composting. Ryan and Adrian, like, they really care about food waste diversion, and all the people that I get to deal with just by being in this business is a really good community of people that are motivated, are smart, and want to prioritize, you know, doing the right thing with all these organics and food waste.
The goal of Happy Trash Can is to ultimately divert as much as possible and create this soil, but we recognize that just as individuals, we can make better decisions, be more informed, spread the word, talk to people, start to change our community's mindset.
The world needs good examples. Take a relationship to a place and create a good example where you're at. We need to, within our communities, be the good news to inspire people to change. Just take the next best step, whatever that is for you in your personal life or in your community. Take that next best step that is a positive contribution to your place.